My name is Nelson Garcia, and I'm the president of the Washington Intergovernmental Professional Group. And on behalf of the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C., Vice President Andrew Joe Fuso, Allison McKithen, and Hosai Rashid, and the staff of the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C., we welcome you. WIPG was founded, as a quick background, was founded in 2009 as a means of working very closely with newly arrived ambassadors and newly elected members of Congress, and quickly introducing them to some of the key policymakers here in Washington, D.C. in both the public and private sector. We normally, like I said before, do this on a live basis. We normally would have either a luncheon or a reception at the World Trade Center, Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center, and which we hope to, again, have that soon. And have been working very closely with the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C. and putting these programs together. And without them, we would not be in this situation today in terms of our success and our ability to reach out to newly arrived ambassadors and members of Congress. We'd like to thank His Excellency and its entire staff for participating in this morning's program. As before I introduce the ambassador, I just would like to remind everybody that we will have an opportunity for a question and answer session after the ambassador's presentation. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A section or link at the bottom. Please feel free to ask your questions through that, and I will read it out to the ambassador. Any questions that we are unable to ask due to time constraint, we will forward to the embassy, and hopefully the embassy will get back to you with an answer to your question as soon as possible. And with that, I would like to go ahead and quickly introduce His Excellency Ambassador Jacques Pitteloud, the ambassador of the Swiss Confederation to the United States of America. His Excellency was born on November 12, 1962 in Zurich, Switzerland. Dr. Piutteloud earned a master's degree and a doctorate from the Faculty of Law at the University of Zurich, with a master's in 1986 and a PhD in 1987. Following an assignment in the Middle East, he also graduated from the International Training Course in Security Policy, or ITC, at Geneva University. He speaks French, English, German, Swiss, Italian, and Spanish fluently, and has a basic knowledge of a few other languages. Ambassador Pitteloud joined the Swiss Foreign Service in 1987, first serving as advisor to the foreign minister. From 1988 to 1989, he was a commercial attaché at the Swiss Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. From 1990 to 1995, he worked in the Swiss Strategic Intelligence Service. Following this, he served as personal advisor to two successive defense ministers until 1999. From 1999 to 2000, he led a study group tasked with redeveloping the structure of the Swiss Armed Forces. Dr. Pitteloud then served as the Swiss government's first intelligence coordinator from 2000 to 2005, after which he was appointed director for arms control, disarmament, security policy, and intelligence at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Bern. From 2010 to 2015, Ambassador Pitteloud was ambassador of Switzerland to Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Somalia, and the Seychelles. Following this assignment, he took up the position of Resources Director of the Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs in September 2015. Finally, on September 16, 2019, Dr. Pitteloud was accredited as Ambassador of Switzerland to the United States of America. And with that, I would like to introduce to you His Excellency Jacques Pitteloud, Ambassador of Switzerland to the United States. Mr. Ambassador.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Garcia. Thank you for having me, and sorry that they gave you the lengthy version of my not really typical career. Being the Swiss ambassador to any country is not always easy, especially in countries that have no direct contact with the Confederation. But right now, the good news is that Swaziland has changed its name to Eswati, so now we will only be confused with Sweden. So it makes it a little bit easier. At the same time, being the Swiss ambassador to the United States of America is a little bit difficult in another way. There are so many positive prejudices about Switzerland in this country. The American people love Switzerland, mostly for good reasons, but there are always the stereotypical reasons of beautiful mountains, neutrality, cheese, chocolate, watches, peaceful, boring, punctual, all the things that you would know about the Swiss. And this is us. But there is another Switzerland. And that's the Switzerland I would like to talk about today. And I would like to say a few words to say how important our bilateral trade relationship is, both for Switzerland and for the United States of America. Switzerland is actually an economic powerhouse. And over the last 10 years, we have invested more than 340 billion US dollars into the US economy, meaning it's more than half one of our yearly GDP. So it gives you an idea of how present we are in the American economy. And in fact, last year, for 3 or 4 months, and for the first time in our bilateral history, the US was our biggest trading partner, bigger than Germany. I'm not speaking about the EU as a whole, but Germany forever was our biggest market. Now the US, which was 6th or 7th biggest market 20 years ago, is turning into the main market for the Swiss economy. So the total trade between our two countries amounts to roughly 130 billion US dollars per year, and it makes us the 8th biggest trading partner of the US. But much more important than that, when we speak about trade, and especially in these times where free trade is being put into question, where people are wary of trading with anyone because of the theft of intellectual property, because of the markets being dumped with cheap products, which obviously is never going to happen with the Swiss, because there are no cheap Swiss products. But if you look at these numbers, you realize we are the 8th trading partner. But in terms of investments into the American economy, we are the 6th biggest trading partner. And in terms of R&D, we are the 1st trading partner of the US. But always between the 1st and the 3rd, it varies with, we are here head to head with Japan and Germany, countries that are a few times our size. It means ours is a mutually beneficial relationship. Switzerland is not here to dump the American markets with products and just, and run away with money. We are investing. There are 500,000 jobs in all 50 states that are directly or indirectly dependent from Swiss companies. But we are not the only ones profiting, because the US is not the only one profiting. We profit too. The US has also a lot of investments. Of course, it's not comparable because the Swiss market is much smaller, but there are quite a few dozen of thousands of jobs being created by American companies. All the big American companies are present in Switzerland. They are investing too. They are present too. So this is the future. I want this share of the bilateral trade relationship to increase over the next years. It has to be a trend. Why does it have to be a trend? Because we are better than allies. We are friends. We share values. This government now, the new administration, keeps speaking about a value-based order, a value-based world order. Well, we totally agree. This is exactly what we want. And being a small country, you are even more dependent upon the world being value-based. If you're big enough, you can decide not to care. Switzerland can't. If you realize that 51% of our economy and of our GDP is dependent upon exports, we just need a level playing field. We need the WTO. We need rules. We need rules on intellectual property theft. We need rules on non-state helps. All the things that normally make it difficult for small economies to survive. There we really need to be part of this discussion about reviving free trade, because free trade has been taking hits. We think free trade is the best way to a successful and prosperous world. Now, our bilateral relationship with the US has always been and will always remain a very good one, though we are not members of NATO, though we are neutral, but the reality is that there is this benevolence towards Switzerland in American politics. Usually. Sometimes it's a little bit of benevolent neglect because we are not big enough to warrant constant attention, and we are not worrisome enough and not unruly enough to warrant constant attention. We are just in the league where you tend to disappear from the radar if you don't find a way to make yourself interesting, and we decidedly won't do that by becoming a rogue state. Because that's not our ways. There is something really special in our relationship, and it's the fact that we have been exercising the mandate of protecting power for the United States of America in Cuba for 40 years, and then it stopped once the US re-established a diplomatic relationship with Cuba, and with Iran since 1980, and it still goes on. So somehow it gives us a political visibility that, of course, would not be warranted just by the sheer political weight or non-weight of a small country that's the size of 2 blocks in New York City. So far, we have had the opportunity during the COVID crisis to test the solidity of our links, and believe me, it was very, very encouraging. And there were many things that went on behind the scene. We did not need to advertise them, where both countries were very, very helpful to the other in times of need. When there was a shortage of something in one of the 2 countries, the other one would help, and then a few months later it would be the opposite. Then we had this brilliant cooperation on the production of the Moderna vaccine. Because in case you didn't know, but the Moderna vaccine, the agent is produced 10 miles from my hometown in the beautiful Canton du Valais. And then it's being processed and bottled elsewhere. But that was again one of these incredible examples of bilateral cooperation. In fact, we have so much in common. We have so much in common because both countries believe in the free market. Both countries obviously believe in democracy and free speech and the democratic values, which is also something that's really important. And we are also 2 countries, and that's something that might surprise you if you don't know Switzerland well. Our 2 countries have been made wealthy and rich by immigration. Switzerland has been, for the past 2 centuries, an immigration country. We have people from all over the world coming to Switzerland because it's peaceful, because it gives anyone the chance to succeed, because no matter where you come from, if you work hard, you will end up, the next generation will be in top universities. We also believe in a close cooperation between the private sector and the academic sector, something that's utterly American and not very European. And it explains why the contacts between the 2 economies are deeper than with many another European country. And believe me, it's not for tax reasons, because even if at some point, because some speechwriter from the Treasury had slipped, if the President of the United States speaks about Switzerland as a tax haven, that was 25 years ago. It's over. Companies are not in Switzerland because of low taxes, because they would be lower in Ireland, they would be lower in many parts of Europe. Companies are in Switzerland because there is predictability in the legal system. The political system is stable because the currency is stable, because you have a very highly educated workforce, and because you will find the right kind of people to work for you. Definitely, they don't come to Switzerland because it's cheap, because it's not. It's not cheap, but there are many reasons to come. Now, the future. What's the future for us? We think that the new investment programs in the US And the green economy or the shift towards a green economy is a unique opportunity for countries like ours to cooperate and to create a new dynamic. The new dynamics in terms of exchanging technologies, learning from each other. You would maybe not know, but we produce trains in the US. In Utah, the best trains in the world are Swiss, but they are produced in Utah. We are leading in a number of sectors, from drones, from green technologies, you name it. We are there. We can bring the know-how, we can bring the jobs, and we can profit from this extraordinary program that's going to take place. We know that the United States is looking for partners to strengthen innovation and competition among like-minded democracies. So there have been legislative efforts like the Endless Frontier Act or the Chips for America Act, and they do offer Switzerland really the opportunity to demonstrate that we are and always have been a high-tech and high-value partner for the American economy. So how does it look now in the near future? What we would like to make sure is that measures that are taken to strengthen the supply chains, because we've seen all the weaknesses of the supply chain during COVID, all the measures that will be taken to stop or to try and slow down the intellectual property theft. We want to make sure that Switzerland is not going to be a collateral damage of measures that are taken against actually someone else, but then you just might be in the fire zone. It has happened once or twice before. So during the last administration, every time measures were taken against the EU and not against Switzerland per se, we are not obviously a member of the EU, but we would be hit indirectly. And what we're trying to do is really to make the US attentive to the fact, now I'm saying something that's politically incorrect, that economically speaking, we are the 51st state of the United States. And that you cannot treat us, or you have to mind hitting us whilst trying to hit someone else. We are also very, very interested in following what's going on in the field of the new world taxation system, the taxation of the digitalized economy, the introduction of a minimum tax rate for companies. It's very important to us too. We are following it. We will play along. We will play our role. We are not going to try and block every new initiative, because we think that our economy is innovative and resilient enough to deal with a new international tax order. And as I said before, it was a long time ago that companies would come to Switzerland just for tax reasons. So we can live with a different tax system. So the next few years are going to be fascinating. They will be totally shadowed or overshadowed by two main challenges. One is, of course, climate change and the environmental challenge that is growing increasingly urgent, and we need to act now, because otherwise we're in trouble. And the other one is call it confrontation, but it's the confrontation with the Chinese model. And we know that we know which part of the value system we belong to. We know what we are practicing in terms of intellectual property protection. We know on which side we are in terms of intellectual freedom, in terms of so we will see how it develops. But the next 2 decades are not going to be extremely easy. And countries who share the same basic values will have to stand together and not waste energy in petty trade disputes, because that would be the horribly wrong thing to do. We need to be together on this, and I'm quite confident that we are going to be able to work together. So this as a kind of an introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your excellent viewpoints on the Swiss perspective of our relationship with the United States. Again, I would like to encourage those participating in today's webinar, if you have any questions, to please submit them at the Q&A section of your computer screen at the bottom. We will be more than happy to ask those questions to His Excellency. But let me go ahead and start off, Your Excellency. First and foremost, I have to say congratulations to Switzerland on defeating France in the Euro 2020. I would be remiss if I did not mention that. I know we talked about it earlier, but for the record, on this day, Switzerland did defeat France in the Euro 2020, and we wish you continued success in this competition moving forward. So congratulations to you. First question I would have is, obviously the pandemic has wreaked havoc around the world with the trade relationships. You mentioned the supply chain issue and how that impacted our direct air link services between Zurich and Washington, D.C. was impacted for a while. Overall, how badly was Switzerland impacted? Because you do rely upon trade a lot. With how the pandemic impacted the supply chain and just the trade relationship, and not just the United States, but really your European partners and other countries around the world.
Basically, I would not say that we coped so well with the pandemic itself. The response was not necessarily what one would have expected from Switzerland, because we are supposed to be prepared for any eventuality, including all those no one ever thinks of. I would say our response was a little bit haphazard. We didn't necessarily understand quickly enough that we would need the vaccines, and that the vaccines would be actually the solution, so that when they finally arrived on the market, we had not yet booked enough of them. So it delayed a little bit the Swiss reaction, which makes me very jealous and very envious, because the US there did everything all right. I remember how all the European media were making fun of the US at the beginning of the crisis, like looking at you. And I kept telling them, do not forget, the US is the country of Pearl Harbor. They always start their wars with Pearl Harbor. But the war is finished when it's finished. So let's speak about it in a year from now. And in fact, you have recovered much faster than the rest of the world. And congratulations on that, because you made the right decisions. Now, our economy was actually cruising along very well when the pandemic hit. We had reserves. Being Swiss, the Swiss are people who start worrying when things are going well. They start worrying because maybe tomorrow we might have a problem. So we build reserves, we overinsure ourselves. This is part of the national ethos, I would say. And it led to a situation where our economy was never overwhelmed. We were never overwhelmed. We took a hit. We lost quite a few points of GDP during the crisis. We are in the process of recovering. I would not say no big deal, because it was a tough situation. But compared to many friends and other countries, we are doing well. We are recovering very fast. This will have been a passing cloud, one that did hurt, but we did basically well. Exports are picking up again, and our main markets being the US, Germany, both countries where the economy is actually picking up, we just follow suit. So we are doing well. So far it could have been so much worse. Try and imagine what it would have meant had the so-called Indian variant, the Delta variant, been around in last February with the infection rates they had. And then everyone would have been overwhelmed, even the Swiss health system. And we were really lucky that the variant we were confronted with back then was one whose infection rate was not too bad. So we were lucky.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We have a question from the audience. Her question is, according to her, or according to online sources, pearls, precious stones, metals, and coins are Switzerland's top exports to the U.S. Are you anticipating that these will continue to be the top Swiss export, or do you anticipate that another sector will emerge as a top export for your country?
it is my hope and my prayer and my work to make sure that we diversify our economic presence in the US. We need a much stronger integration in the US market. Nothing against exporting, precious stones and gold, which is, it's a very complicated circuit, a worldwide circuit where Switzerland has a role to play, but it's one of, for instance, speaking about gold, we have the best gold foundries in the world. So that we are one of the biggest exporters of gold in the world. There is not a single gold mine in Switzerland, but that's because the refining process is being done in Switzerland. Our trade relationship with the US is slightly skewed, or is not necessarily healthy. It's a lot of pharmaceuticals, and it's gold and precious stones and whatever, but we have so much more to offer. And we have the best micro industry in the world. We have the best biotechnology in the world. We are, in the meantime, the tiny city of Zug, which, no one knows Zug, it's the size of Georgetown, is one of the 3 centers for blockchain technologies worldwide. We have a very strong presence in the food sector, but there we are present in the US. But there is also the whole machine industry, fine tool, high technology, where we are actually producing the bodies of quite, if not a majority of US rockets. We are producing drones for all over the US. So it's not just, I would like to diversify. I would like that ours grows into a more diverse economic relationship, so as to make sure that if one sector is hit, another one will take over. Just saying about, Switzerland, if you think about a country the size of a little bit bigger than Virginia, the northeastern corner, the northwestern corner in Basel, 2 of the 3 biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. The southwestern corner, one of the 2 leading centers worldwide in terms of biotechnology and life science. Then you go to the northeastern corner, and you have one of the 2 world's best centers in microtechnics and machinery. And then a little bit further south, you have blockchain technology, and then in Lausanne you have one of the 2 biggest food companies in the world. So this is our strength. Our strength is when one sector is taking a hit, we would like the other sector. The other sector will make sure that the economy keeps afloat. Let's try and do that on the American market, because we have a lot to offer, but it's also good for our own economic security.
Thank you, Excellency. You mentioned the issue of the pandemic and the variants, and I know Switzerland just recently announced that they were going to go ahead and allow visitors from around the world, even in places like India where the variant is predominant, to come in as long as they provide certification that they have been vaccinated, or at least they have taken tests. The question I have is somewhat related to this, because in the Philippines, we were looking at certification. But unfortunately, in this digital age, you can easily fake a certification that you have taken the vaccine. So what steps has Switzerland taken to prevent fake certification from being utilized as a means of entering your country?
So we have developed our own system of COVID certificate that you can have on your phone. It's I would dare to say pretty secure and pretty well done. Right now we are negotiating with the European Union to have the Swiss COVID certificate certified also by the European Union. As you know, the relationship with the European Union is a little bit rocky right now, but I'm sure we'll find a solution. There is only that much you can do, in the end. There will be fakes. People will be out there with fake certificates, which is not a terribly clever thing to do, because in the end you end up dying because you didn't take the vaccine, and then you end up dying of COVID. If stupidity would kill this, the world would not suffer from overpopulation. But we will see. No, we will adapt to the international standards in the end. What I'm very happy about is the fact that right now we have opened the borders for US citizens, for US business people. Anyone who is vaccinated can now enter freely into Switzerland. And I was waiting for this decision, like for the Messiah, because we need to restart, you know, the discussions and the intensive discussions we need to be together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ambassador. Going to another subject matter, actually, in my previous life, I was a lobbyist for the insurance industry here in the United States. And during 9/11, when 9/11 happened, one of our biggest concerns was the impact it had with the reinsurance industry. Swiss Re was one of our members and one of our people that we represented. And obviously, that was a shock to the system. You mentioned climate change. I know that has some impact on the insurance industry because of especially coastal areas around the world. In the United States in particular, are going to be impacted by climate change as well. Do you see the insurance industry in Switzerland, Swiss Re in particular, to be in good position to address that? And do you see them taking the lead on issue of how to address climate change, considering the financial impact it has on that industry?
Definitely. You know, the legend has it that what made the fortune of the Swiss insurance industry was the earthquake in San Francisco in what was it, 1899 or 1904? 1904, I think. Because the Swiss insurance industry actually spent their last Swiss franc on paying and honoring their commitments, and it made the reputation of this industry. So it was actually a natural disaster that made us into a worldwide insurance, let's say, player. We are totally confident that the Swiss insurance industry is, you know, they're already thinking ahead. They are already thinking ahead. They're trying also to work with the new field of sustainability or sustainable finance. It is also a domain where Switzerland is very active, trying to develop new models where the finance industry will work at being more sustainable and supporting more sustainable industries. I personally am totally confident. If I look at the imprint of, to take one of many, but of Zurich Insurance in the US, and the fact that they are already thinking ahead. They have been introducing the insurance apprenticeship model now for many years in the US. They are trying to be not just a company that makes money in the US, but to be part of society, to create new opportunities, including for disadvantaged minorities. They're very strong at that. So they will deal with that too. I'm really confident. But of course, the challenges will be enormous. If you look at the number of tornadoes, the number of natural events, it's increasing by and I don't even want to think about next summer in the West and the fires, because it's looking pretty terrifying. But in the end, that's what insurance companies are for. So I'm quite sure they will honor the commitment like they did in 1904.
Thank you, Ambassador. Again, there are some people who just recently signed on to this program. Just a quick reminder, if anybody has any questions, feel free to submit them at the Q&A link at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be more than happy to forward them to the Ambassador. Excellency, one of the biggest things to admire about Switzerland is its ability to take the lead on issues of social policy, in particular refugee crises. Addressing the refugee crisis from around the world, taking the leadership on that. As you know, the United States and NATO are now beginning to withdraw from Afghanistan, and we suspect that in a few short months, the government will fall, the Taliban will take over, and then you're going to have a new wave of refugees coming out of the region. Europe has faced this crisis before and is expected to face it again with this new development. So the question I have is, what has Switzerland done to prepare for this next influx? And in particular, how has Switzerland in the past and currently and into the future, is Switzerland being able to accept refugees in country, considering the size of the country as a whole?
Yeah, we are entering a minefield here because, of course, as you know, the question of refugees and immigration is is a major question in all northern or countries in the northern hemisphere, and it has turned into a political topic, or if not the main political topic. We have been dealing with waves of refugees from the 70s. We had successive waves of refugees, many of them economic refugees, others political refugees. The first big wave was economic, and there were people from Southern Europe looking for jobs in Switzerland. Then we had the first immigrants from the Balkans. Thank God for the Swiss team, because without them, we would not have beaten France yesterday at soccer. Then we had a lot of refugees from Sri Lanka, Tamil refugees from the civil war in Sri Lanka, then Yugoslavia again, then with the civil war in Yugoslavia, and again and again and again. And every time the media were crying havoc, and some media at least were crying havoc about Switzerland being swamped and flooded with refugees. And every time with each wave of refugees that came 10 years later, you wouldn't mention them anymore. They were Swiss, they were there, they were integrated in society, they were working, because we believe in integration through work and through giving, the same chances. Of course, we've had our issues. Of course, there is only so much a society can absorb. It's a fact. And it's a difficult balance to thread. Of course, we are watching with dismay what's happening in Afghanistan right now, because in fact, yes, at some point, we will see a wave of people fleeing the new regime. It's going to happen. We will deal with it pragmatically, like we always did. Trying to keep the numbers at a manageable level, but at the same time, not parking the new arrivals into ghettos where they will be stuck for 3 generations. This is maybe what it's not maybe, it's definitely something we have in common with the United States of America. And it's the fact that, wherever you come from, you have your chance. And yesterday, when we were celebrating the victory of a Swiss team that is composed to 50 or 60% of first-generation Swiss, I was celebrating with my embassy team that is composed to 50% of first-generation Swiss. So we can deal with that. I'm fairly confident we can deal with that, but it won't be easy. If we were to be confronted with something similar to the big Syrian influx that was such a problem in Germany and all of Europe, it will be difficult logistically, and it will be difficult politically, no question.
Okay. Great. I do have 2 quick questions from the audience. Let me start off with Mr. Timothy Siglin. Mr. Siglin asks, as a U.S. citizen having lived in the, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Valais, Bas d'Andaz, and working in both Italy and France, I'm curious how the current quote-unquote rocky relationship with the EU impacts scientific work with EU assets. And specifically, he mentions the Hadron Collider at CERN near Geneva. Has that been impacted in any way in terms of your relationship with the EU?
I wish I had the answer, and I wish I had a positive answer. I don't think it's going to impact the Hadron Collider. I think that's too big a project and too important a project. You cannot haggle with this thing. That's something that you cannot touch. But yes, scientific cooperation is being impacted right now, because we have been retrograded in the priority given to Swiss universities and Swiss researchers for the European research programs. It's a pity. Personally, but that's my very personal opinion, I think that for all the differences that we have together, if we start playing this game of tit for tat, and okay, you don't want to cooperate, then, and especially in fields like research, there are only losers. It's not the most intelligent pressure by the EU to go on research. Please go on other things, but research should actually be sacred. But we will see. But there will be an impact. I'm afraid there will be an impact, and this is definitely something that once we enter into the new bilateral strategic dialogue that the Federal Council wants to open with the EU, we will have to address research first. because this is really the basics, you can't do without research cooperation.
Okay. Second question from the audience, from Maury, and I hope I pronounced the last name correctly, Pipearl. Speaking of insurance, Switzerland is a great example of how private health insurance works hand in hand with public policy. Americans often hear Switzerland cited as proof that we should not go to an entirely public health system, but the Swiss system clearly requires that everyone purchase health insurance so that their risks are shared and the costs kept under control. What would you say to American policymakers who believe this detail is unnecessary? And just basically, when you compare and contrast the healthcare system of the United States and Switzerland, are there similarities or are there just differences that just prevents the Swiss model from being adapted in the United States?
That is definitely another minefield, but let me say the following. Ours is a very expensive healthcare system, but it's definitely more just than the one that you are dealing with, and we are slightly better than you are at keeping costs under control. It's always a little bit shocking to a Swiss patient here in the US to realize that you can discuss the price with the hospital or with the doctor. We are Swiss, there is a price for a certain surgery or a price for whatever, and it's discussed between the private industry, the insurances, between the state and the hospitals and whatever, and in the end you have a price. And here it can go to it's just very, very surprising to us. Seen from the point of view, let's say, of hardline Republicans, Switzerland is almost a communist country in terms of its health system. Of course we're not. Of course we're not. We have, I think, a decent mix between the interests of the private industry and the health of the patients. We are desperately trying to push the costs down because, like everyone else, we have an aging population, meaning more people in medical treatment. We have new technologies emerging by the day, and they are expensive. And once they are there, how do you deny them to the patients? And at the same time, we are trying to keep the costs under control. We have not succeeded so far. So far, we have managed to stabilize the growth of the healthcare costs, but they are still around 1/3 under the US costs. And frankly, the general health of the population is much better. So there are definitely things that in our view could be adapted or could be made better. We think that there is also a lot of bureaucratic levels in the US system that make it horribly complicated to navigate your way through the thing. Ours is simpler because we are simple minds, so we design a simple system.
All right, and let me take one last question of Your Excellency, and this is somewhat of a comparison. I know in Switzerland, and I mentioned earlier, I had a meeting with your great defense attaché team, and one of the things that I found very interesting was that in order to make a decision, let's say, for example, to purchase a fighter jet for the Swiss Air Force, it actually has to go through a referendum, or at least there's a possibility that it could go to a referendum among the Swiss people, whether or not to proceed with a purchase like that. Obviously, in the United States, we have Congress to make that determination. It doesn't go necessarily to the American people to make that decision. And in California, however, we do have a referendum system where it's been criticized heavily because it seems to imply that politicians aren't doing their job by transferring the decision-making process to the people of California. It seems to imply that why do we need politicians when they're not making that tough vote? So the question I have for you is, at least in Switzerland, has that been proven to continue to be a benefit in terms of making a decision-making process on a national scale, or is that being reformed so that most of the decision is really being done more in Parliament than it is with the Swiss cantons or with the Swiss people?
The Swiss referendum and initiative system is the product of 700 years of trial and error in a very peculiar country with a very peculiar history of small communities agglomerating themselves into something bigger, more out of fear of the bigger neighbor than out of love for each other. So that the whole system actually is really very, very specialized and very, very Swiss. The example you were taking is an extreme example. It could be almost a Californian example because for either you vote to have an army and then you vote the budget for the army, and then the army has to decide which or if they want at all to buy a fighter plane. But it's a very special aspect of political life. We have a group in Switzerland that wants to abolish the army. They know they will never succeed, so they are attacking big procurement cases. But normally the system works very well, and I would not trade the system for anything else. For Switzerland, take the Swiss system and just export it, tel quel, to countries that have a different political history, and you're heading for disaster, or as in the case of California, paralysis.
Right.
Not in our system. It doesn't paralyze us. We can still, it's part of the legislative process.
Okay. Well, with that, Your Excellency, I don't see any other questions from the audience, so I will go ahead and begin to close up our program today by first of all expressing our deepest appreciation to you for taking some of your valuable time to do this program with us this morning. I want to go ahead and thank obviously Samia Alaf and your entire staff for their generosity and for helping secure your time for this program this morning. We look forward to working with you and your entire staff moving forward. Again, we hope to do these events live, and surely you will be on our top list of people to invite because of your generosity and your willingness to do this program with us this morning. Just a quick reminder, this program was recorded. It will be on YouTube in about a couple of weeks once we do our editorial fixes, and feel free to upload that and review at your leisure. Again, thank you to the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C., without whom we could not do these programs consistently and with a high sense of outreach and professionalism. World Trade Center, thank you so much on behalf of WIPG. And to all of you who participated in this morning program, thank you for joining us this morning. We hope to see you in person soon. And any additional questions you have for the embassy or for His Excellency, please feel free to submit them at the chat room at the bottom of your screen, and we will forward that to the embassy as soon as possible. And with that, thank you, Excellency. Good luck to you in the rest of Euro 2020. And we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you, everybody, for participating today.
And thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.